my name is Zach. I'm going to be showing you a little bit about the packing list for the Algonquin Canoe program today. Now, I personally have been on the program now 4 years in a row. This will be my 5th year going, and so I do have a little experience with just what works and what doesn't work. I'm going to go through the list bit by bit and talk about especially the pieces that have caused confusion in the past and have really caused people to not enjoy their trip as much as they could have because they didn't exactly understand what the list was asking for. So first of all, and this is a simple one, passport. Without this, your trip's not going to happen. And I know it sounds funny, but this is something we check for every day on the trip up. We say, everyone get out your passports just to make sure that everyone has them on hand, because really it'll ruin the whole experience for us all if one person doesn't have their passport. Next, you're going to have a duffel bag that's going to hold all of the things that you're bringing with you on this trip. So I bring a bag about this size. Okay, it's a pretty large size bag, but that's fine. We're all putting our bags into one big box trailer that's going to be hauled behind one of the vans. And so this size bag is pretty much adequate. You don't really need a lot more, and anything more than this, you're really just bringing too much stuff. So this is a good size, and you really throw everything in there together. But that being said, you really are packing for 2 distinct trips within this one program. The first trip is a road trip up and back, and it's going to be essentially half of your entire journey. It'll be about 3.5 days up and 2.5 days back, give or take. And so you're going to bring clothes for about 5 days on the road. We'll be stopping at campsites each night with bathhouses and showers along the road trip portion of the experience. And for that, you can bring your toiletries. You can bring toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorant, all the stuff you'd have at home. You know, if you wear contacts, of course, you bring your contact solution. All of those things you bring with you. And that'll be for the road portion. It's pretty luxurious, other than the fact that we're sleeping in tents. Now, moving on, we're going to be looking at what you actually need on the trail portion. And that's an entirely distinct part of the trip that is totally different from the ride portion. So the first thing on the list is a bathing suit. And we don't recommend the bathing suit because we'll be swimming at pools all the time, although there will be one pool on one of the campsites on the way up. Instead, we recommend this because while we're out on the trails and we're canoeing all day long out on the lakes, it really is nice to have a bathing suit because they're a material that dries out quickly, and it's something that's comfortable and you can move around in, which is really great for the paddling portion. Next on the list is a pair of shorts or quick drying pants. Now, you can bring athletic shorts, but keep in mind that between the lakes, we're going to do something called portaging, where we're essentially taking our gear, putting it on our backs, including the canoes, and carrying it across land. And so if you wear really thin athletic shorts, it might be comfortable, but you ultimately might rip them, snag them on briars, cut them, and you're kind of out of luck because we're out there in the wilderness. So you want to bring something sturdy. I personally love what are called trail pants. Now, these are a nice light material. I don't know if you can tell the fabric just by looking at it or hearing how it rubs together. But essentially, it's a really lightweight fabric, and the lovely thing about trail pants are they have zippers that allow you to convert them from pants to shorts and back again. Now, this is what I wear during the day while we're paddling out there on the lakes. They can get wet and dry off really easily. They don't keep you too hot and let your body cool off. And they're also comfortable, but they're resistant to things like jaggers and little rips and snags, because that's what they're made for. Next, we have on the list for the trail 2 t-shirts. Now, the reason we say 2 t-shirts is because within the trail portion, there are also 2 distinct portions of the trip that you're really packing for. The first being the wet portion. A little bit of that I've already covered with the swimming trunks and with the trail pants. And then the other being the dry portion, which is when we get into camp each night, you're going to set up camp and then you're going to change out of your wet, soggy clothes you've been in all day and change into some comfortable, dry, warm clothes for the evening and for sleeping. So we say 2 shirts so you can have one for each because you really don't want to stay in wet clothes all the time. It's not good for you. That being said, the shirt that you use for this portion of the trip really should be a nice light mesh, both of those shirts. Because a light mesh like this is a good underlayer, but it also allows your body to breathe and allows you to dry out quickly. You do not want cotton t-shirts for this portion of the trip because cotton, unlike wool or polypropylene, which is that Under Armour-like fabric, will actually make you colder when it's wet instead of giving you warmth that you need. Next, we have 2 or 3 pairs of wool or polypropylene socks. For that same reason I just mentioned, you want the wool or polypropylene on the trail because if you get wet, you still want to be able to stay warm even if you're wet, and that's what wool and polypropylene do for you. Next is a pair of wet shoes. Now, for me, I like to bring an old pair of my running shoes or workout shoes. Now you can see there's holes in here, they're beat up, but they have tread, and they protect my entire foot. Now you can bring water shoes, but nothing that is like a sandal. Because like I said, between the rivers, we're going to be getting out and we're going to be walking along in our wet shoes, sometimes as much as a mile or more. And so I bring these shoes because they allow me to have support and traction while protecting my whole foot. So keep that in mind. If you have an old pair of running shoes, I would recommend bringing them along. Next, we have a lightweight hat with a brim or visor, which I didn't bring to show you, but you get the idea. It's a baseball cap. This isn't something that needs to stay dry. This is just something to put on during the day while we're paddling so that you don't get too bad of a sunburn on your face, kind of keeps the sun out of your eyes. All right, next, we have a nylon windbreaker or jacket. Now this can also be your rain jacket, which is what I like to do to save a little bit of space. And so this jacket here is going to be one of the most important pieces of equipment you can bring on the trip. You can see I bought a Columbia rain jacket just because I know that that's a brand I can trust. Now this is a jacket that will keep you dry and warm even when it's pouring outside. And we've had years where every one of the days on the trail, it's raining. And so you really need a good rain jacket. That's one place you don't want to skimp. Don't get frog togs. They're kind of a papery mache and they'll just rip at the first sign of trouble. You want something that if on day 7 it's still pouring rain, you can still stay dry and warm. And that's so important. Next is a pair of dry long pants. Now this means it's the pair of pants that you're going to slip into after a long day of paddling out there. You want it to be dry, but you want it to be warm. And so what I like to use are essentially soccer pants, right? And so they look kind of like sweats, but they're actually a mesh material, a nice thin mesh. And that way they'll keep your body heat in, but they're also not cotton. And that way they will still keep you warm if you're wet. Next is a long sleeve shirt. Now, I didn't bring one to show you, but basically, same rules apply. Polypropylene, wool, you don't want cotton. Cotton's just going to make you cold. Next is a wool or fleece jacket or sweater. Now, I love to bring fleeces like this. They're nice and hardy. They're not going to tear. They don't look all that great, but they're resistant. Now, that's the most important thing to have out there on the trail because this will keep you warm on those cold nights. Next, we have 2 sets of underwear. That's self-explanatory. Again, not cotton. 1 set of polypropylene long underwear. That just means long johns, but again, not cotton. No matter what you do, not cotton. Next, we have 2 bandanas. You may say, I don't wear bandanas. I don't do that. Well, guess what? On the trail, these are your pot holders. These are how you wipe your forehead when it's dripping sweat in your eyes in the middle of the day. You want to have these things. They're very useful and they're very much a multi-tool. Next, we have a pair of dry shoes. Now for me, this is where my newer running shoes come into play. I'll just pack them in with my dry shoes. They compress nice and down. They don't have a lot of form to them, nice flexible sole. And essentially, this is just your walking around camp shoe. So you don't need anything amazing. You don't need hiking boots. You just need some kind of shoe that's going to be closed-toe, so, surround your whole foot, but allow you to walk around the campsite. Here's a good example of a nice, flexible, comfortable, but yet compactable hiking shoe. And so with that, that's going to actually go into what you'll see in just a moment is your dry bag, which is the set of everything that you have on the trail that will be allowed to stay dry. Next, we have a camp or sport towel, and that's just like a little microfiber towel will do. This is a very compact version of one, right? It compacts nice and small down. But one thing you have to realize is on the trail, we're not taking showers. And so this is only going to be if, you got really wet and you really need to, dry off your head and your hair to kind of keep you, get some warmth back in you. That's pretty much what it's going to be for. Some people never even use them because we're not taking showers out there in the wilderness. Now that's everything for the trail. And I'll show you in just a minute which parts go in the dry bag and what that's going to look like. Next is one of the second, maybe the most important thing in the entire trip, and that's your sleeping bag. Now for a sleeping bag, you don't want a square, boxy-shaped sleeping bag from Walmart. You want to actually get what's considered a mummy bag. These are actually designed to keep your body heat in, and they're much sturdier for on the trail. Now, your sleeping bag needs to be in a stuff sack or a bag that allows it to be about this large, okay? And the reason for that is everything that's going to stay dry is going to go into one dry bag. If your sleeping bag takes up the majority of that space, you're going to have to start cutting things out of your trip like clothes. So make sure your sleeping bag compacts to a nice, reasonable size, something like that. Next, you want your rain gear, your jacket and your pants, which, like I said earlier, your windbreaker can double as your rain jacket, and your rain pants, I would say that's pretty cut and dry. Again, no frog togs, nothing light. You want something that'll be sturdy and hold up. That way, if it's raining, you can stay warm. Next, you want a headlamp. These are very key. Every night when we get into camp, there are no light posts in the campsite. If you want to go to the toilet, guess what you need? A headlamp. If you need to wash your dishes, guess what you need? A headlamp. You will be needing these things all the time. So please, please, please bring a headlamp and spare batteries. Next, you want a pocket knife. I'm not kidding you. This is enough. Every year, people show up with knives this big. We don't need those. This is just in case you need to cut some loose strings or a rope or something like that. That's the most you'll need is just a little tiny pocket knife, and a multi-tool will do just fine. Next, we need sunglasses, waterproof sunscreen, lip balm, and insect repellent. All these things don't sound like they're that major. When you're out on the trail and you need one of them, trust me, you'll want them. Next is a camera. Now, you don't actually need a camera. This is optional, but so many people have brought back amazing photos from the trip. I would say, what the heck? At least get a waterproof disposable. If not, bring a small waterproof point-and-shoot camera. The last thing on the list is a fanny pack and a water bottle. Now, I personally love having a fanny pack on the trail. It allows you to keep things like your bug repellent, like your waterproof camera, right there on you. Because you're not carrying a backpack when you're out there in the canoe. So if you don't have a fanny pack, everything you have is in your dry bag. And honestly, that's not something that you're allowed to really access while we're out on the lakes, because if you open it up and then the canoe capsizes, everything's wet. Now that wraps up the list for what you need to bring. And the last thing I'm going to demonstrate is how you pack a dry bag and what that's going to look like. So here we have our dry bag. It looks large. You're thinking, man, I got to keep all that stuff with me on the trail, but the truth is this really isn't a lot. So let me demonstrate. The first thing I'm going to put in are my dry shoes, right? So they go all the way down to the bottom and level out. Now I'm going to start putting in all the clothes that I need. I've got my mesh shirt, that's got to go in there. I've got to get my camping pants, those have to go in there, my nice dry pants. Next is my fleece, my underwear, my socks, don't forget your socks. Then you have your long underwear, your top and bottom, right? And don't forget, one of the most important things of the trip, your sleeping bag. That also has to go in here. And you're starting to see this really isn't a lot of room for the amount of stuff we need, right? And so here's my dry bag, not even fully packed yet. It's starting to look pretty stuffed. Last but not least, I always capsize mine with my dining plate. I like to put it on top, and that allows you to kind of press down on the top of the bag and compact everything inside. So now, this is all you're allowed to carry with you for 7 days on the trail. Everything in here is going to stay dry. Nothing else is. So when you're thinking about your dry clothes and what to pack in your sleeping bag, remember that it should all pack down to something about this size. Okay, and that really puts everything in a frame of reference, at least for me, and how much we're really supposed to have with us on the trail. Now the last thing that I haven't mentioned is a ground pad. This can make the difference between you having lovely nights of sleep and being miserable and lying awake all night. Now this is called a closed cell ground pad. You see how, you probably can't see from there, but there's no opening in the foam, right? It's not what's called open cell. This means that it won't log water. That means that if it's dipped in water, you pick it right back up, wipe it off, and we're good to go. Open cell ground pads, if you use those, will stay wet all night long and you'll be soaked your entire trip. One other form that closed cell ground pads can take is this nice kind of accordion shape. And that's something to look out for as well. I think I've covered all the basics, so if you have any questions, send Elizabeth Brager or Gregory Ferentz an email and just let them know.